to please ensure your mobile phones are put on silent, and if joining us by Zoom, that you please press mute when not speaking to avoid background noise. Arrangements for dealing with planning applications are as follows. Each application will begin with an officer's summary and update. Items involving attendance by the public will be dealt with first, and speakers are restricted to 3 minutes, with a warning at 30 seconds remaining. Any councillor not on the subcommittee who has requested to speak will also be given 3 minutes. Members are to note the information given by both officers and speakers. Any decision proposed which is contrary to the recommendations contained within the report will require reasons if the proposal is to refuse, and both reasons and conditions if the proposal is to approve the application. In accordance with the Council's equality policy, speakers are asked to refrain from making any comments which could be construed as being discriminatory or defamatory, otherwise it will be necessary to intervene. So before we move on to the first item, do we have any apologies, please? Thank you. First item is the declaration of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests and declarations under section 4 of the Code of Practice for dealing with planning applications. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, first of all, as item 4, page 6, I had a private site visit. Item 7, page 70, I had a private site visit. I did actually speak to the applicant, who just explained a few things about his application, but I didn't offer any views on his application. Item 8 was page 91, I think that was a private site visit as well. Item 5, page 31, private site visit. And of course, item 6, page 49, was a site visit by the committee this morning.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coultish, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Just the site visit the committee attended this morning on page 49, item 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. The same here. I attended the site visit this morning.
Thank you. Councillor West, no. Just attending the site visit. He didn't go. Okay. Councillor Meredith, please.
Thank you, Chair. As with the meeting last time 3 weeks ago, I know some objectors, I know the architect, and I know and have attended group functions held by the group applying for application 6 or agenda item 6 on page 49. So I'll be excusing myself from the meeting at that point because I cannot possibly be considered partial. Also, I attended a meeting of Rowley Parish Council where agenda item 8 was discussed. They did ask me some planning policy related questions, but I didn't give an opinion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abraham, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 7, in that my ward colleague lives reasonably near the application site but isn't directly affected. And I did a private site visit this morning to item 4 in Hessel.
Thank you. Councillor Weeks.
Yeah, I joined the committee site visit for the item on page 9.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to have kept you with your arm so long, but Councillor Jim.
Ditto for me the site visit this morning, item 6.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Councillor Davis, please.
Yes, item 4, I have met with neighbours on this one, and I have visited the site, but made no comments. And on item 6, went on the site visit this morning.
Thank you. And I will do my declarations of interest, which again, I went on the site visit for item agenda number 6, page 49. And I also have had work done by the applicant on item number 5, page 31 for the company that he deals with. Although I have no other contact with him other than that.
Chairman. Yes.
I'm sorry, Councillor Fox. I must have missed you.
Item 5. I received an email from a resident, but have made no comment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That seems to be everybody. So we will now move on. Item 2, to approve as a correct record of the minutes of the meeting of this subcommittee. On. 12th of October 2021. Can I have a proposal, please?
Yes, sir.
Councillor Rudd, thank you. And Councillor Jump, seconded. Thank you. Just bear with us one moment. We are just trying to get some equipment that works. Absolutely. Yes. And in the meantime, we'll go on to item number 3, withdrawals. Could I ask the officers if there are any withdrawals from the agenda, please?
No withdrawals, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, before we move on to applications, if you can just bear with us while our secretary just comes back with the required equipment. I would say that now is the time to pause and take a drink, but unfortunately, we don't have a drink machine. Thank you very much for that. So it appears that we have a reasonable update for the first item, which is item number 5, page 31 on your agenda. And yeah, perfect timing. Are you ready? Oh yes, item 4. I do apologise, chaps. Item 4, page 6. I managed to jump on. I was getting so excited.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the conversion of an existing building from 7 flats to 6 flats at 40 Southfield in Hessel. The scheme involves various alterations, including the installation of replacement dormer windows to the front, the installation of 2 roof lights to the front and 4 roof lights to the rear, the erection of a part 2-storey and part 1st floor extension to the rear, the erection of single-storey extensions to the rear with roof terraces above, the installation of a new ground floor window to the side elevation, 2 sets of 1st floor glazed doors to the rear elevation and associated works. There is one update to that printed in your report, which is a further letter from number 36 Southfield, which I can summarise for you as follows. There are serious concerns for the development of this property. It's noted in point 9 recommendations of the report that no development will commence until a construction method statement has been submitted and approved. The concerns are the development is being completed on a property on a 90-degree bend on Southfield. There are safety concerns due to speeding vehicles and conflict with contractors' vehicles, and accidents will occur. The road surface of Southfield is breaking down due to the volume of contractors and building materials being delivered over the recent past. The terms of approval should clearly state that all contractor traffic must remain within the boundaries of the property whilst working on site. The plans have been amended and are now deemed acceptable to the East Riding, but it is the residents that will have to live through and live with the end result. The property owner has already chopped down trees at the rear of the property without the proper consent, and the health and safety executive would have had serious concerns if they had witnessed this taking place. And there are concerns that another planning application has been submitted for this site for a 5-bedroom house on the garden area, which would completely undermine the conservation nature of the area and should not be approved when it is presented for approval. Aside from that update, Chairman, there's just one further amendment, which is a revised site plan that isn't included in your papers, which is displayed for you on the screen there. The only difference being the house at the back that was referred to by the objector has been omitted from the plans because it doesn't form part of this application and is being considered separately. And the access shows 2-way movement at the site entrance and a hedge to the site frontage to screen the 6 parking bays to the front of the building. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed for that. We have 2 speakers on this particular application. The first one is Mr. L. Atkin. Mr. Atkin, are you here? Mr. Atkin, are you on Zoom? It appears we don't have Mr. Atkin at the moment. It's not arrived, so we will move on.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I'm down as speaker 1. I'm David Ettridge, architect. I don't know if there's some confusion.
Ettridge, I'll come to you in a moment, if I may. Mr. Atkin is not here at all.
Chair, if I may, I spoke to Mrs. Atkin last night, and she was hoping that, I think the husband was hoping to be here, but maybe couldn't be here, and was hoping that Jane had received a message about reading out his objections, but maybe that's not the case. But I know it was difficult for him to get online or here.
Okay, well, that's unfortunate. It doesn't appear we have the statement to read out, so we'll have to apologise to Ms Atkins, but as far as we're concerned, we can only do what we can do on the day. So we will move on, therefore, to the next speaker, which is Mr Ettridge. Mr Ettridge, you're on Zoom. I think we've just heard you. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Well, we can hear you fine. As you're aware from my introduction, you have 3 minutes in which to put your points, and you'll be warned when 30 seconds remain. The time will start from when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as we know, this is an application to change 7 very poor flats into 6 very high quality flats fit for the 21st century. The building and grounds are currently in an extremely poor state. The building has not been maintained properly for at least 20 years. The rear annex is particularly bad. So it's actually quite shocking to realise that some of these flats were still let out until last year. There are actually needles and drug-related apparatus in some of the flats. Obviously, our clients cannot commit to any of the necessary works until the planning is approved. With COVID and the crazy world related, and then so far taken well over a year. The clients committed to purchase this site in March 2019, which with hindsight was very bad timing. They're small local developers and would greatly appreciate a good result today so they can start work on the building and of course earning a living again. Obviously, the application is recommended for approval. There have only been a few objections, essentially as locals can easily appreciate the enhancement that the development will bring to the area. I myself live and work in the area and have spoken to a fair few people who are very keen to see it happen. It's been an eyesore for a long time. The building will be re-roofed in slates. 1970s style dormers to the front had to be replaced with sympathetic Victorian proportions with lead cheeks and sliding sash windows. All existing windows are to be replaced with very high quality sliding sash timber windows. Basically, the street scene will be greatly enhanced and the building will be returned to its former glory. Following comments from locals and the conservation officer, we've admitted the render and we'll use good quality buff brick, obviously similar to the photos, to match the existing building. The front of the site will be utilised for parking, which neighbours will appreciate. Basically, the 7 previous flats only use the front section of the driveway, so you couldn't realistically get many cars on at all. They were parked on the street. We're suggesting only 6 flats, and obviously with better parking facilities. The roof terraces were the only real area that needed clarification. Well, after discussions with planners, we heightened the side screens from 1.5 to 1.8 metres. And the planning officer now agrees that the terraces are actually more private than existing windows would be. Whilst it is hard to explain on Zoom, essentially the side screens on the terraces act like blinkers on a horse.
You have 30 seconds left.
Thank you. So the side screens act like blinkers on a horse, forcing the view directly ahead, or in this case, to the rear. Their balustrades are then set back from the edge of the terrace behind planters. This stops anyone on the terrace from standing at the edge of the balustrade and looking left or right over the adjacent properties. Obviously, with standard windows, you can easily look left or right directly over your neighbours, hence the balconies are more private. Whilst there are houses to the rear on Davenport Avenue, these are actually over 70 metres away from the closest terrace. Lastly, there's an application for a new build, as mentioned before. This is being dealt with separately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ettridge. We will now move to the debate, and I have Councillor Abraham, please.
Thank you. I'm happy to defer to the ward member if you wish to speak.
Councillor Davison.
Yeah, there have been a number of objections made by residents, and some of those objections have been addressed. The objections from those premises on either side will have now got screens will be applied at 1.8 metre high at the edge of these balconies that are being created, and that will stop looking into their gardens at the rear. There is still the facility for those on the balcony at the back, which will overlook or look towards Davenport Avenue, but I feel that the distance between that balcony and Davenport Avenue premises is substantial. It's 40 yards, something like that, and wouldn't impinge. The other aspect that the conservation officer is very keen about is the fact that initially he's saying we shouldn't have cars parked on the front garden. But then he accepts that cars might have to be parked on the front garden, in other words, to get them off the street. But that there's a limit there. They can only park 6 cars. Now, I reckon that these particular apartments, flats, call them what you will be of such quality that you will have people there with more than 1 car. And I also think that looking at that plan, having stretched to the entrance to 5 meters, presumably, so that cars can pass each other in the entrance, that even 6 is a bit of a tight fit. You know, if people come in 4x4s, for instance, then you're not going to get out of the car. I would hope that in due course, the 6 at the front could be extended to parking at the rear. That's dependent on a number of other things, but that's what I'd like to see, and that's what the residents would like to see, because parking on the road in that area is difficult. It's a right-hand bend, and parking is limited because of drives and things like that. There is an accepted state whereby cars are parked on the front, but I don't think 6 is enough. And I would almost like to ask if it's possible that when it comes to the parking facility, that in the condition, if there is a condition, there probably isn't because it's already on the plan, that we ask that if any parking is available subsequently at the rear, that is laid for parking, additional parking, and the other aspect is having a hedge. Which again, the conservation officer says there should be a hedge 1.8 meters high at the front in order to mask the fact that there are cars there, which he doesn't like being there. And so the condition is, in condition 11, says that the hedge to the front of the site should be retained and allowed to grow to a minimum height of 1.8 meters. I'd really like that to be altered, because I think half of the hedge doesn't exist at the moment. On the left-hand side of the 2 halves of the hedge, and the right-hand side is of such quality that you would take it out in the first place. So really, I'm asking if we can just amend condition 11 so that it is about achieving a hedge of 1.8 meters, a privet hedge. The one at the moment is just overgrowth, quite frankly, and I'm wondering if that's possible. So if I can propose an amendment to that condition 11, that there be a 1.8 meter privet hedge across the front of the premises. Now, how that is achieved is up to our officers and the developer, but at the moment it's just unsatisfactory, quite frankly, unsatisfactory. And also, I would like to see some additional parking around the back. But, I'll leave it at that for the moment. I don't want to get a second on the first amendment.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'll then just pass over to the officers to see whether or not they could answer those queries for you.
Thank you. Yeah. In terms of the parking provision, the 6 spaces for 6 at least 2-bedroom apartments does fall short of our normal standard. We would normally want 2 parking spaces for a 2-bedroom apartment and 2 or 3 spaces for a 3-bedroom apartment. But the important thing to note with this site is it does benefit from planning permission to be used as 7 flats, and the site has no parking provision at all. So assuming those 7 flats were fully occupied, all of those vehicles would have to park on the highway. So officers and the highway officer are satisfied that in this case, the 6 parking spaces proposed would be a betterment. And in terms of the future, there's no reason going forward that they couldn't in the future look to provide some additional parking at the back, but we don't think that that is necessary to make this development acceptable, given that what they're proposing is certainly better than what's there now. And in terms of the landscaping condition, we can certainly amend condition 11. And I would suggest perhaps where it says that the hedgerow should be retained and allowed to grow, perhaps we could say that that should be supplemented with additional planting, which shall thereafter be retained and allowed to grow to a height of 1.8 meters, because that would be, we want to make sure that there is a solid boundary to A, prevent vehicles driving over the footpath and onto the road without having to come out of the access, and B, to provide some screening of the car parking spaces. So we can certainly do that.
I'll second that, Chair.
Well, thank you, Councillor Jump, but just before we say that, you didn't actually propose approval, you just proposed a change in the conditions. So if we could just say you can link that with the proposal of approval subject to those changes in conditions.
I would, yeah, I think, everybody in the neighbourhood wants to see an improvement to that property. It's been standing idle for too long, and hopefully it can be reinvigorated and reoccupied. Thank you, Chair. So I would propose that.
You're proposing approval with that change in those on that condition 11. Okay, and Councillor Jump, you're happy to second that?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
No,
it's just really, it's appalling that it's been allowed to decay to such a degree, and I'm surprised the residents have taken it so calmly over the years. So I think they will be almost ecstatic to see that something is happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, do you want to just press your little button? That's it, fine. Councillor Abraham, if you'd like to come in now.
Thank you. Well, I would quite happy to seconded Councillor Davis, and it's sad to see such a lovely building really in this state. And when I was there this morning, there was a walking group walking around looking at the conservation area, so it is a lovely area. And I think it's really good now that we're going from 7 down to 6, and to enable that degree of off-street parking. And I think it's quite a sustainable location because Hessel Station is not too far away, so maybe there won't be such a heavy reliance on the motor vehicle as we may all be fearing. I would like to say that the site has obviously reverted to nature quite a bit in the time that it's been in this state of dilapidation. So is there any of the usual wildlife enhancement conditions that we can put in? I think that would be a benefit to the whole area.
We haven't got any wildlife enhancement conditions in the papers. The standard thing for something like this would be to include bat and bird boxes within the site, which we could add if you felt that was justified.
We can include in hedgehogs.
The standard condition is for bat and bird boxes. If you were to go as far as to ask them to do a wildlife enhancement plan, which includes various other forms of nature conservation improvements, then that would be the next step. But I don't know for a development of this scale that will be justified, because effectively it's reducing the building from 7 to 6 with some, I mean, they're quite significant extensions, but in the context of what's already there, the overall built development would be modest, I think.
Fine, thank you. Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually going to move approval. So I think 6 high quality flats with parking are far better than 7 without low quality flats without parking. So happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Meredith, please.
I just wanted to comment at the end there to get on the record that anybody who knows me here knows I very rarely support a balcony application, especially one with the potential for overlooking. And I'm not normally a fan of screening for mitigating this, especially on an old classically styled building with, you know, for example, obscure glazing. And I'm not too much of a fan of the close blend of modernist and more historic architecture there. But I don't think it's too much of a stretch, especially after the comments we've heard, to say that this is an improvement to the building by every possible measure. But I didn't want to be voting for something that has multiple balconies without having justified that this is a rarity, and don't any of you get used to it.
Thank you very much. We don't seem to have any other hands up. So we do have, sorry, would you like to come back, Councillor Davis? No. We do have a proposal for approval subject to two alterations to conditions, correctly seconded. However, if I just may ask one point, is I noticed that during the proposal, Councillor Davison did mention about privet hedges rather than just hedges. Can we be that specific, or are we just going to say hedges?
I was quoting the conservation officer, Chair.
No, I absolutely. It's just that you mentioned that, and then the officers mentioned hedges. So I just wanted to clarify which, if you wanted to be that specific, that's all.
Yeah, I would specify. Yeah, because at the moment, if you allow whatever's to grow, it'll just be a mess. There are briars in there, and goodness knows what.
Yeah, Chairman, we can amend condition 11 to incorporate supplemented by additional privet hedgerow. I don't see why that would be
fine. Excellent. Okay, in that case, now we've clarified that. Again, shall we? Just vote.
Yeah. So all those in favour of approval with amendment to condition 11. Yeah, the buttons and boxes. And Councillor, do by show of hands, all those in favour.
Okay, so that has been approved unanimously with those alterations, and thank you for your consideration.
Yeah, may we have a drink, please?
Yes, shall we just take a 3-minute pause before we move on to the next one, so that disturbing everybody's deliberations.
I was going to, but I didn't know.
Are we okay?
Okay, we will now resume the meeting, ladies and gentlemen. We are now looking at item agenda number 5, page 31 in your papers, and I will just ask the officers if there are any updates, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of a detached outbuilding comprising a triple garage with a home office over, a summer house with changing rooms, storerooms, construction of an outdoor swimming pool with associated hard standing. There are no updates for this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We have 2 speakers on this. The first one is Mrs. Dimmock, the applicant. Mrs. Dimmock, are you there?
Yes.
Are you here? Please come forward and have a seat at the table there. Mrs. Dimmock, you'll see in front of you there's a little machine with a button in the centre. If you press that, it looks like a Wi-Fi button. Yes, you're on. And make sure it's as close to you as you can without touching it with your papers, which will cause feedback. Mrs. Dimmock, as you've probably heard, you have 3 minutes in which to put your points, and you will be warned at 30 seconds when that time remains. The time will start when you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sarah Dimmock, and I live at this property alongside my husband Ben and our 2 children. We've applied for planning permission for the pool and outbuildings to enjoy spending time outside with our family. Understandably, we have had objections from Apple Tree Barn. With this in mind, we approached the owner of the property to discuss our plans and give her the opportunity to make any changes or feedback. She had no objections at the time and said that everything looked okay. Furthermore, we have a large hedge at the boundary of the garden, which forms more than sufficient screening to the proposal. In addition, the roof pitch is angled away from the boundary and there are no windows overlooking their property. We have received an objection from East End Bungalow, who are concerned about possible noise and feeling hemmed in. The bungalow is over 70 metres away from the proposed pool, so we would argue that any possible noise would not affect them. Also, they would only be able to see the top of the pitch roof over the hedge from the very bottom of their garden, arguably not making a significant difference to their view. The building can't be seen from the main road, or indeed from anywhere else within the village, as it would be in our private family garden and would not be visible to anyone. We have lived in the village over 12 years and always keep any of our shared driveways and pathways very well maintained. We love living in Asselby and we enjoy the rural life and definitely would not want to detract from this. We have positioned the pool where it is in the corner of our garden, so it is not visible from the road or from the footpath at the front of the house, or indeed from the rear view of any of the houses on Main Street. The pool house has also been designed with the rural feel of the village in mind, hence it being single storey, with the exception of a room above the garage, mainly done from a design point of view to improve the look of the building and for it to be in keeping with the main house. In summary, we want to build the pool and outbuildings to enhance our home and enjoy spending time with our family. We have designed the proposal with our neighbours and the surroundings in mind. Thank you for your time today. I do hope you'll consider our views when coming to your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll just move on to the next speaker, which is Mrs. England via Zoom. Mrs. England, are you there? Mrs. England, can you hear us? You may be on mute if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, Mrs. England. As you've heard from my introduction, you have 3 minutes in which to put your points, and you will be warned when 30 seconds remain. The time will start from when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm the occupant of Apple Tree Barn. My home is the closest to the proposed development at the old Fold Yard. I would like to present my objection to this. And I do agree, yes, Mr. Dimmock did come round and discuss it with me. He came round during lockdown. At the time, I didn't have time to study the actual plans, and it wasn't until a later date that I realised how big and how close the actual project was going to be. Now, I just to say, I purchased the barn from my mother approximately 25 years ago. I made my application for planning and conversion consent, and one of the stipulations was that the conversion should not have any impact on the surrounding area and that it would retain the look of an agricultural barn. To this end, where possible, the windows should be in the same position and size as the original openings. On the north wall, the 3 windows look out onto the access lane onto the proposed development, and they are of original openings and size. The positions to reflect the barn as it was former use. Despite the windows being small on that elevation, because the outlook was at that time onto open agricultural fields, I had plenty of light and uninterrupted views down to the marsh and onto the Yorkshire Wolds beyond. I am now faced with a development which has positioned so near to my home that I am in no doubt that it will totally overwhelm my barn, completely obliterating my outlook and making my home dark and dismal inside. In addition, I'm concerned about noise pollution due to the development's closeness to my property. And I think that's all I've got to add at the moment. That concludes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move to the debate. I will stand in as ward councillor for this particular one, so I will start. Unless we have anyone else who wishes to jump in. Councillor Hammond, you start first.
Thank you, Chair. I've looked at this application closely. I think the applicant's drawings and the way the application is presented is very good, and it's a very well designed building. However, I personally find myself completely agreeing with the officer's report and the officer's recommendation that the scale of the development is out of character with the rural nature of the village that's been proposed to be built in. It's far too big in terms of scale for an outbuilding. It's not subservient to the host dwelling. And in my view, again, agreeing with the officers, I think due to the severe scale of the application has an unacceptable impact on the residential amenity of the objector's property at Apple Tree Barn. So I will be moving officers' recommendation for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Second, Chair.
Councillor Meredith, would you like to say anything?
Well, Councillor Hammond has very much stolen all of my thunder. I think it's a very tidy application. It's rare we get such quality and clear drawings. I do think the building is actually sympathetic in the sense that it is, in its appearance, does look like a stables. But the bottom line for me, the salient point, is that we have refused smaller dwellings for being built in the open countryside, and we have refused commercial premises being built in an unsustainable location in the open countryside. To me, this is bigger than a house and an inappropriate location for a dwelling. So whilst I think it is a very tidy application, very well put together and very well presented, very considerate and very thoughtfully designed, ultimately, like Councillor Hammond said, that the officer's report does really come to the same conclusion I do. And that's why I'm happy to second Councillor Hammond's very well put together points.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rudd, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I had a private site visit here, and quite frankly, when I found the place, I looked from it and I thought, they're going to build this big barn, are they? I couldn't see it. I couldn't see where it was. And I don't think anybody else would particularly. So if you like, yes, it's behind the applicant's property. And to my mind, it wouldn't affect anybody as such. It's like everything else. If we'll say there's a bit of noise or extra noise from a swimming pool, I think it's up to or in a garden, private garden, I think it's up to the neighbours to have a quiet word in the ear if that does happen. But I would be assured that the applicant will no doubt make certain that doesn't happen. But this, to me, yes, a well-designed buildings. An extension, if you like, to a house. Development limits, I don't think they matter too much when you're looking at something that's actually behind existing properties, as this is. As I say, it was very difficult when I went on this private site visit to actually, see where the development would be. Obviously, I was aware it was behind the property on the front. So to me, it looks fine, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jump, please.
Thank you, Chair. Some people have mentioned it's open countryside, but in the officer's report it says garden. So can I have officer's clarification? Is it in the open countryside or is it located in the garden?
Thank you. It's actually both, so you can actually have a garden in the open countryside.
Thank you.
So I think it's a garden. Councillor Coultish.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't go over the points that have already been covered. I do tend to agree with Councillor Hammond and Councillor Meredith. I think the size and scale of something of this size, despite the fact that it's a wonderful building, a great facility, and you know anyone has the right to build this in the right place, and lucky of them if they can. But I think with it being the size and scale that it is, 10 metres away from Apple Tree Barn, I think is unsympathetic of residents and neighbours. And obviously there's the issue that it's in open countryside as well. So I'm leaning towards supporting the proposal for refusal, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to be clear, it's not in open countryside. It's in a garden that happens to be in open countryside. So, thank you. Oh, Councillor Abraham, please.
Thank you. Well, I have sympathy with the objector, and I think it's the fact that actually the two-storey element is nearest to her property. I think if that wasn't there, then I would maybe think differently about it. But I can't support this as it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, similarly, it was the impact on Apple Tree Barn, I think, which I was concerned about, particularly a two-storey high building only 7 metres away or 8 metres or something like that. I think if the building itself, which I really didn't object to in terms of size or whatever it is, if it had been orientated so that it was away from Apple Tree Barn, like the other side of the field or whatever, then I could have perhaps been in favour of it. But while it has that impact on that one particular cottage, then I couldn't support it, I don't think. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Coultish.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just come back in on the garden open countryside issue. I think it's a slippery slope if we start saying you can buy a field that's in open countryside on the edge of permitted development rights, turn it into a garden and then turn it into development rights. I think that's a slippery slope. It's open countryside for a reason, and whether it's a garden or not, which you may be allowed to do, I don't think that should be a natural progression from open countryside to garden to development zone. Thank you, Chair. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Unfortunately, that's planning. Councillor Weeks, please.
Thank you. Right, I'm really disappointed with the comments because I agree with them and I don't want to agree with them because I really like it. I was kind of hoping that you'd all said that you'd support it, so I could. But no, I agree. I mean, it's a bit too big. It's in the wrong place. Really, really well drawn, really well thought out. I mean, it's been going through how it's, looking at the plans, how it's all laid out. Every area is, almost every square inch of this is used in a smart way. This isn't something that somebody's just decided to pop up. This is something that's been thought out, designed, and will make a fantastic feature to anybody living in this house if it was built. I mean, imagine being a kid and having that in your house. I mean, it'd be awesome. But yeah, it's in the wrong place. I really hope that the applicant can come look at this again. I don't know how, move it around. And I hope that it'll come back and we can approve it because that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other points? I feel the same way as Councillor Weeks. I feel that that this is a wonderful design. It enhances the village. It can't be seen from anywhere other than the two neighbours. Unfortunately, it is very close to one. Despite what the neighbour and objector said, it doesn't affect the light in any way, shape or form because it's on the north side, so it doesn't affect it at all. And the roof is sloping that way, but it is still 7 metres and not the 10 that we normally look for. Had it been 10, I think maybe a number of us would have changed our view. As to the size of it, it's not affecting anybody. So I'm a little concerned that we're bothered about size, to be perfectly frank. If we're going to start picking on people when they've just built something a little bit larger than what you think, then I'd be concerned. But I do follow everybody's points of view. I do think it meets section 4 of our local plan, and I do think it meets section 12 of the NPPF, but there's no point in me going through all of that at this time. I think we've had a proposal for refusal and correctly seconded. So Jane, if you'd like to go to the vote.
So this is an application for refusal. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 for refusal. Those against refusal? 1, 2. Any abstentions? 1. Yeah.
So that has been refused, and we will now move on to number 6 on item 6 on your agenda, page 49 in your papers. And if I could ask the officers if there are any updates, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the change from a dwelling to a community centre with associated works and the erection of a single-storey extension to the rear following the demolition of an existing sunroom at Welton Croft, 6 Common Lane in Welton. This application was reported to the Western Area Subcommittee on the 12th of October, where members deferred the application for a site visit. We carried out that site visit this morning, which I hope members found useful. Since the previous committee meeting, the architects supplied an amended plan showing an additional 18 overflow car parking spaces at the request of the committee. There are no updates, and the officer recommendation is approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. We have 2 speakers on this particular one. Ms. Hemmings. Ms. Hemmings, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, Ms. Hemmings. So as you've been hearing, you have 3 minutes in which to put your points, and you'll be warned at 30 seconds when your time is running out. And time will start from when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. It would appear that some of my neighbours and fellow objectors are a little shy, so here I am again, speaking on the behalf of myself and others who have objected to the proposed plans. At the last planning meeting, I listened to what was said by the councillors, and there are a few observations I'd like to make. Firstly, location. In my mind, location must be a key factor in your decision making. If you don't believe the location to be suitable for its intended use, how can you consider approving planning? Would a Starbucks be suitable on this site, or a restaurant? This is a proposal for a commercial property. The fact that it's a good cause shouldn't make any difference. As for the good work done by the charity, this decision shouldn't be around popularity, who got the most votes or got the most people to write in support or disapproval of the project. The numbers don't matter, other than to show that it's an emotive subject and one which the local media has tried at every point to turn into a non-story centred around hate or a them and us dispute. I still object to the proposal for the reasons previously stated. However, if planning is approved, I'll be a good neighbour. It's never been personal. I just don't think the location is suitable, and would ask them to do the same by giving serious thought to the parking and opening hours, which are my 2 main concerns. On the opening hours, we have young families, people that work shifts, and people like me who go to bed early because we have long and busy days. The late opening hours stand to cause major problems for those of us who live closest. The sound and light from cars or of people stood outside talking during unsociable hours is a serious worry for me, and one I never thought I'd have to contend with when I bought a house at the end of a purely residential street. As for parking, someone said it last time, but let's be realistic about this. People don't walk, much as the planet would thank us if they did. I'm a realist, and I know that unless it's a sunny day, people will travel in their cars at the slightest hint of rain, wind or snow, never mind in autumn and winter when it's dark, even if they're local. Please be realistic with the number of parking spaces that are needed so that we don't end up resenting the community centre and its visitors because parking and traffic issues would cause unnecessary animosity. As stated by others at the last meeting, there is lots of land on the proposed site, which I'm sure you all saw this morning. So if it is to go ahead, please put parking conditions in place so that their patrons don't ever really need to park on Common Lane. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, if you would like to take a seat, and the centre button looks like a little Wi-Fi sign if you press that. And as I've mentioned to others, you have 3 minutes in which to put your points, and you will be warned when 30 seconds remain. And the time will start from when you start speaking.
Thank you very much. Sorry, good afternoon. I'm speaking on behalf of the East Riding Community Foundation Trust, which was founded by healthcare professionals to carry out charitable and community work. The proposed community centre will provide a base for members of our community that do not currently have access to permanent facilities. You very kindly visited the site this morning to look at the proposed car park areas, which have been increased to 31 spaces as a direct result of your comments at the previous committee meeting. You noted the location of the rear meeting room extension. Your comments with regards to the positioning of the widened vehicular access to the north were noted, which will help to reduce the effect of vehicles leaving the site on the opposite dwelling. Following a question this morning, can I confirm that the total floor area used for community purposes is 124 square metres? This excludes the store, the kitchen, the WC and the corridor. The meeting room is 64 square metres. The total capacity of the centre is expected to be 25 to 28 persons, rising to 64 persons seated at dining tables for Ramadan. Could I now provide some information with regards to Ramadan? During Ramadan, which takes place over a lunar month, Muslims fast during the daylight hours. Then, as a community, break their fast at sunset, sharing their meal together. This is a solemn spiritual experience, bereft of music, dancing, etc. The application is recommended for approval with 15 conditions, which control the hours of operation, the use of the building, noise transfer, etc. The application is considered to comply with the NPPF and all relevant policies in the East Riding Local Plan. I therefore hope that you will be able to support the community centre and recommend approval. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. And then we'll move to the debate and we'll move to the ward councillor. Councillor Abraham, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'd like to thank colleagues who attended the site visit this morning and I hope you found it useful. I'm extremely concerned about this application and about the amenity for both my residents in Welton and for the community members themselves. And our public protection officers have expressed concerns over the loss of residential amenity from the potential noise disturbance from cars and events there. And actually, conditions are going for a whole month up until 11 o'clock against the advice of the public protection officers. I've got concerns that these premises, as proposed, will not be adequate for the members, for the numbers indicated by the agent in the supplementary information submitted. And particularly when we get down to space of 1 metre square per person, that really is quite uncomfortable for me. And I feel as though the well-being of members may well be compromised. I would love to support the application because of the good work that the charity does, but I can't. And I'll draw comparison to another facility that I've got in my ward from another religious group, which regularly meets with over 1,000 people. But that's in a purpose-built building. We have people coming in from Lincolnshire, from all over the place, and that has created me absolutely no complaints whatsoever. I just feel as though the amenity of the residents in this area will cause a lot of complaints, and it will be beholden on the council to be addressing those complaints. We saw this morning car parking when we were parked in the road ourselves. The residents were having difficulty getting out of their drives. We can't make people park on the site. I appreciate the efforts that have been gone to increase the number of car parking spaces. But when you're asking people to double park and people naturally want to be able to get out when they want to get out, there will be reluctance to park on the site, they will be tempted to park on the street. And that is simply unacceptable for my residents. So I would like to move refusal on this, and I hope I will get a second, but I don't know. I appreciate everybody's got their own opinions on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. When this last came before this committee, I was most concerned about car parking spaces, and I'm glad to see that the applicants doubled the car parking spaces to about 31. I feel much more comfortable with that. I've just got a question with officers, because I feel that the last remaining issue for me, which was really shown on the site bit this morning, is that the current access is directly opposite the living room window of the, is it property number 3 on that map, or the property closest to the access. And I was just wondering, I did suggest on the site visit, I think the applicant said in his speech that any extension to the access be done to the north. Could we actually condition that the entire access is moved further to the north, so it's no longer in front of that property? And therefore cars entering and leaving at night time would no longer flash into the windows of that property.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we could do that as part of this application. The existing access is there currently, and I think it would be quite reasonable for you to specify that any widening works needed to be on its northern side. Moving the access to a different position on the frontage would necessitate a completely different site layout and removal of additional landscaping that we've not considered as part of the scheme. So you could certainly defer the application for further amendments. You could, if you're not satisfied with the position of the access currently, you could refuse the application and the agent could come back with a revised scheme. But I don't think as a condition, we couldn't approve it today with a condition that the access is moved, because that would necessitate a completely different layout and design of parking area that we've seen on the plans now. So we could certainly ask for the access to be widened on its northern side, but I don't think we could ask for it to be moved as part of this scheme now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We will move on to Councillor Rudd, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, very interesting site meeting this morning. Yeah, I think of a few things. I had a private site meeting the last month when it came to committee. One of the main objections by the mover of the to refuse and the objector is the noise. Now, I was astounded at the noise of the A63 this morning. I really was. I didn't realise that traffic sounded, there was so much noise from that traffic. I didn't realise how strong it was. And yet we've got new residents who live there, put up with that noise, yes. But there might be some potential noise from this proposed development. And it's wrong, it's going to be too noisy. I don't take either the suggestion that there'll be too many people there and this type of thing. I think you'll find that this particular organisation, these particular people, Ramadan and so on, will adhere to conditions and so on. And I would think there would be no real problems there. Then I look at the conditions, recommendation for approval. Not all, sorry, but conditions 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 11. All for the amenities of the existing area and the existing residents. 7 conditions of 15, nearly half, are for the benefit of the existing residents. The particular site development needs development, certainly. It's a large site. The property hasn't been lived in for some time, and it certainly will be a gain, although this gain will not particularly be seen because it's so well, there's so many hedges around it and what have you, so much landscaping on all sides, that it won't be seen anyway. It's next to a cemetery. I understand that was reading the report that one of the objections was that it was next to a cemetery. Well, I can think of one particular place at Ellerton where the village hall is there. It also uses a play area, I understand, next to the cemetery. No problem there. And I couldn't see any problem because there happens to be a cemetery next door. And I think we've also got to think of the charitable work that these people do. Tremendous. And how could the local people benefit from these, some of the local people, especially young people who want to go to various user facilities and use some of the benefits of the charitable work. So, I think it's an excellent scheme and I'll certainly support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Rudd. Councillor Coultish, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Like I discussed last time this application came, I've quite a lot of, well, some concerns over this, particularly the parking and the lights flashing into the houses opposite, and as well as the opening hours. And for me, it's the opening hours that is particularly the concern. So just to ask officers, we've heard that most days, most weeks, it's not going to be running at full capacity. In fact, it's going to be running at a very limited capacity. So would it be appropriate or possible to reduce the hours except from the holiday? So for example, the opening hours say until 6 on a Sunday. I think 4 is more appropriate, since that's you know, accepted that is, it's a holiday, the day of rest, and shops close at 4.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I mean, members of the committee can grant planning permission subject to whatever conditions you feel are appropriate. So if you think that the conditions recommended to you in the report, particularly condition 8 regarding hours needs to be amended, you can do that if you so choose. Councillor Abraham mentioned that we'd gone against public protection advice. Public protection are there to advise us. Ultimately, it's the planning officers that make the recommendation, and you as members that make the decision as to what you think is reasonable. So if you think 6 o'clock on a Sunday is too late, then we can amend that. What we've tried to do with that condition is draft it in a way that it works for the applicant without, but still providing the safeguards for those neighbours that they're not going to be disturbed at unsociable hours in the evening or too early in the morning. And if they could always appeal the decision, if you grant planning permission with a condition that they feel that they can't work with, they have a right to appeal. So they could appeal that condition, even though the permission being approved in
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. With that said, I think for me it's becoming quite clear that this is probably the wrong site, and the group itself will be much better suited somewhere else. And obviously Brust's a massive area, and they've got loads of housing allocation land and spare land that they're intending on developing. And I think that there's probably a much better solution somewhere else for a community group. I'm not sure I'd be too happy living opposite with these opening hours, although I don't really know what the impact is, and like we discussed at the site visit today, we can't give temporary permission for these hours and then reduce it later, because it either works or it doesn't, and so that's putting us in a really difficult situation. With that being said, I'd be happy to support approval with reduced hours closer to what public protection recommend, and with Leo's recommendation of any widening of the parking entrance being to the north side. However, if no one would propose and second that and support that, I'd have to vote for refusal as the application stands, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Coultish, thank you for the proposal, but you need to be a little bit more specific on the opening hours, not closer to.
Well, I think it would have to be deferred to officers and public protection, because I don't know what is acceptable hours. All I know is that these hours are way too late, in my opinion.
Maybe we can bring the officer back in, Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, so 725 of the report sets out that public protection recommended 9 AM until 9 PM on Monday to Thursday, 9 AM until 10:30 PM on Fridays and Saturdays, and 9 until 6 on Sundays. And I think that reflects what we've got in our condition, with the exception of Ramadan, which we say can take place during one calendar month, where the centre can be open until 11. So apart from that particular festival, we are in line with what public protection has recommended.
Yeah. So are you looking to reduce the Sunday hours, Councillor Coultish, or is that acceptable to you, that what we've got?
I mean, if that's what public protection says acceptable, and fair enough. I mean, I'm not the person to say it should be this hour to this hour. I just feel that these hours are too long for the average week. I'll leave it there, Chairman. I'll see how the debate goes.
Thank you. I've got a number of speakers lined up. Are you wanting to make a point on that one, Councillor Hammond? No, okay. Councillor Fox, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second Councillor Rudd. I felt that I listened to the debate when this came to us before, and I'm concerned about the space, the parking space, although I did make reference to the fact there was a cemetery there, and probably there'd be many parking spaces there in an evening. So I would like to second for approval. Thank you.
Councillor Rudd, we weren't sure that we heard you actually making a proposal, only that you would support it.
I would be supporting.
So are you moving approval? Okay, so councillor moving approval and councillor Fox seconding. Sorry, but we've got to be very specific on these. Yes. Councillor Weeks was the next on my list.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Okay, couple of points. First of all, thank you to the applicant's agent for arranging the site visit today. It was really useful, and the information you provided there was really useful too. I'm going to echo what I said at the site visit actually, and that is that it's a real shame that the way planning policy is set up, the planning process is set up, is that we have to make permanent decisions on applications before it's built, which makes perfect sense. You can't expect somebody to build something and then ask them to tear it down 6 months later. Having said that, it is a shame because we would then be able to understand more of what the impact actually is. I agree with Councillor Abraham. I think we're maybe losing sight a little bit on this parking issue because whilst on paper they've increased the parking provision, or they've almost doubled the parking provision, it's not ideal. It is double, you are double parking, you are blocking somebody in. And if you arrive late and want to leave early for an event, you're not going to park somewhere where you've got to block somebody in, or you're going to get blocked in yourself. You want that control. That's why you arrive by car. You're in control of your own movements. And if you are then relying on somebody else and somebody else's movements, you're going to, if I were a driver and I was faced with that situation, I would want to park on the road to ensure that I was able to get in and out. So I can see why they've done it. They've responded to what we said almost literally and increased the number of parking spaces. I think it's a little bit cloak and dagger the way they've done it. And I think as a committee, we need to be really, really clear on what we're approving, because logistically that's going to end up being a bit of a nightmare. Site visit was useful for the express purpose that it actually demonstrated clearly to me where the entrance is. And the entrance, as has been pointed out, is directly in front of somebody's living room. Now, when you've got a dwelling there, let's say it's got 4 cars in and out, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a problem. If we're talking about 30 odd cars in and out, event finishes even at 9 o'clock. You know, if an event finishes at 9 o'clock and you've got 20 cars leaving the site, all going out that drive, all pulling out, engines starting, lights going, you know, gears grinding. It's not, I don't think it's fair. And I think that, you know, we have to be mindful of the way that development in general will impact on local residents. I knew the comment from Councillor Rudd was coming about the A63. I was waiting for it, and you know, I think it's a bit unfair to suggest that any noise generated by this is in any way comparable with the A63. You know, that is a dull, low. It is a background noise. It's something that you get used to. It's akin to saying that, for example, if I'm at home on a night, I can hear the vehicles driving down the road. As soon as the next door neighbour starts their car or opens their door, you hear that, but you don't hear the cars coming because you get used to them. And I think that's just that's a sensible recognition of that. And to say otherwise, and you can shake your head at me all you like, to say otherwise, you know, you've got to realise that the A63 is not comparable to what's happening here. And I think we need to do the objectors the service of actually recognising that. Likewise, I think the charitable work's been mentioned a number of times, and whilst it's incredibly admirable, in planning terms, I don't see why that's a point that we need to be recognising. Whatever this is being used for is not relevant to the application that's in front of us. What we're talking about is converting a residential dwelling into a community centre in a residential area, and I don't think that's right for the reasons that I've set out.
Thank you, Councillor Weeks. Councillor Abraham, please.
Thank you. Well, yes, I would like to, of course, to pick up on a couple of things that Councillor Rudd said. I live alongside the A63. I hear the traffic noise, and I can assure you that at 10 o'clock at night, it's totally different to 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, you've got peak time when vehicles are starting the days. 10 o'clock in the evening, it's totally different, and that background noise is just so much lower. And that is absolutely recognised in all of the applications that are coming in for the development of Melton West, for example. The drop-off in noise is remarkable. And Councillor Rudd mentioned 7 conditions protecting amenity for residents as a big good thing. Well, it's just too many. And if something has to be so tightly conditioned to make it acceptable, and you say you're going to be relying on our enforcement officers if things don't go according to how the conditions are set out, it's just not acceptable. It is not fair on my residents to be having to contact planning enforcement or public protection to ensure their own well-being and their own public amenity. So those are just my comments on what Councillor Rudd said. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to all the debate, and I think everyone agrees it's quite a difficult application. It's been before the committee twice, and we've had long debates on it both times. I think that the big difficulty for me is that I personally have no issue with the principle of the development in this location. I'm fine with the community centre being where it is. I did have concerns about parking, but they've been addressed by the updated plans, which I'm happy with. I do have some concerns about the access still. However, I don't think that's a strong enough material planning reason to refuse the application, because in principle, I think it's fine. I think that's where the big issue comes. I think there are a few minor issues with this, but I don't personally think there's a strong enough material planning reason to refuse the application outright. So if members are minded to approve the application today, can I request for the permission of the mover and seconder of the motion for approval that we have the condition about extending the access to the north to help reduce the impact on the opposite property of the access issue. And if we are to move approval, we are to move approval. But for me personally, I think the principle's fine. It's just getting the details right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. Councillor Rudd, would that be acceptable to you as proposal?
Yes, that's fine. Yes, that would be so. I mean, that's already pointed out by Steve, because it cannot be altered by a condition. It has to accept that.
Thank you. Well, before I bring in Councillor Fox.
I mean, you see how it's worded. I mean, I think at least the worded, we actually have to consider.
Before I bring in Councillor Fox, let me just bring in Mr. Deavy, and he'll be able to just clarify that point.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to confirm, condition number 6, we can amend that to say that the access will need to be widened to a minimum of 4.5 metres on its northern side. We can do that by condition. What I said was we can ask them to move the access to a different position on the boundary as part of this scheme. We would have to defer for amended plans and bring it back. But we can ask for the widening works to be on the northern side only. And I have just quickly spotted while I'm speaking that some of the conditions refer to the previous block plan. So condition 13, condition 14, condition 15 talk about the block plan. We've got plan 4A now, so I'll just need to update those references if you do move approval.
So is that acceptable, Councillor Rudd? We'll just change that condition. And Councillor Fox is second. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, but I would like to ask the officer a question though. If the entrance is changed, if I haven't got my map here to see, and I've not been on the site visit, what difference will that make of the cars shining in this one house that we keep talking about? Will that change that completely? I mean, because that seems to be a big issue. And as I've listened to it, where I live, we've got larger houses in front. We've got, I've seen the babies born and grown up, and they now have all got cars and live at home. And there must be at least 12 cars going from those 3 homes now. And I never noticed those cars. My blind's down on an evening. I don't notice the lights coming into my window. I mean, it maybe depends on what kind of blind you've got up there, but I just think the way things are now, with all these young people owning a car and staying at home, wherever you go and live, that you'll always have cars and car lights. And I mean, you know, I've just heard that, is it near, where did you say it was, David, near the A63?
Yes.
And so how does that cope with the lights coming from there, you know? I sometimes think when we sit and listen to some of these arguments at times, life's changed so dramatically now. We can't have perfection anymore. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm not really sure if there was a question in there for me, to be honest. I mean, in terms of the site access, it is located more or less directly opposite a property on the other side of the road. So a vehicle exiting the site will shine its headlights at the front of that house before it turns to the right to exit the site down Common Lane. If the access were moved further north, they probably wouldn't have direct light shining into their bay window as they exit the site, but as they turn due south and start to head down the road, the bay window sticks out from the front of the house, so there'll still be light in the window. So I suggest the benefit of moving the access, there would be a benefit to it, but I suggest it would be minimal. You know, I don't think the fact that shining the headlights into the house opposite as vehicles exit the site would be so bad that it would justify refusal.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Deedy. So Councillor Fox, if I can just clarify that you are happy with that change in the condition that Councillor Hammond mentioned and Councillor Wood. Thank you. We'll now move on to the next speaker, which is Councillor Jump, please.
Thank you, Chair. When this first came before us, I was worried about the parking. To me, it was inadequate. It is now much better. It's not ideal, but there's nothing to stop somebody going in and saying, who owns a car, what's it, can you move it, please? Yes, job done. I also think the location is suitable because it is straight off the A63. Some people are saying, oh, it should be further down in Brough South or something. I mean, all that traffic will have to go through Brough, which is not good for the centre of Brough, which already has a lot of traffic going through it. So reluctantly, I would support this application. It's not ideal, but I feel that perhaps those people living in the vicinity are unduly worried about something because they don't know what's going to happen. And if there is a lot of annoyance and it's interfering with their way of life, they can approach East Riding and I'm sure we can get the matter resolved, but I hope obviously it wouldn't come to that. But there is an avenue down which residents can go. So reluctantly, I would support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Jump. Next on my list is Councillor Rudd again, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to answer Councillor Abraham and Councillor Weeks, they fail to mention that there is a tree, in fact, outside this property that they're so concerned about. Might be a thin tree at the moment. Remember, we're entering winter now, so you know I'm sure it flows with leaves during the summertime. So that's a shield to it as well. When people talk about light into properties and so on, it is as if a car is going to stop there, shining its headlights into that property. It's the cars are moving all the time, The A63 I mentioned was in conjunction with the fact that many people had, or people had bought houses down there, knowing that they were next to the A63, which is an extremely noisy road. So they were aware of that, and then they complained about a bit of noise that may well come from a property that it's well within its grounds. There's plenty of landscaping and so on to protect the noise, and of course we've got enforcement officers to see that it is if it isn't. So you know, I don't think their arguments stand up.
Thank you, Councillor Rudd. Councillor West.
Good afternoon. I'd just like to support Councillor Abraham Weeks really in their comments. I do think that given that it is predominantly a residential location, to make it into essentially what is becoming a commercial building with traffic movements that are going to be in peaks and troughs, but certainly you will get a large amount of vehicles all at once. I think it's unfair on the residents. I think that, as Councillor Jump says, people have got an avenue to get redress from council officers with enforcement. I tend to feel that if you've been living in a house and this is suddenly there, it is not as if you've bought it as the A63 is, and that is there, you know that's there, that people shouldn't have to go through that really. Yeah, so I think for residential amenity, I think unfortunately the building is in the wrong location. I also point out that we quite often comment in this committee about bungalows, and this is certainly a loss of a residential property.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond.
No, I've got nothing more to say. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, okay. In that case, Councillor Davison, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say that I was right behind Councillor Hammond when it came to actually moving this entrance further north than just half a metre or whatever it was going to be. And I'm wondering if we approve the with some sort of reference to moving the frontage, whether in negotiation with the applicant, they can see what we're saying, because we want to avoid lights going into that last particular house. I wonder whether it's possible for them to say, well, okay, we'll go down that road or drive or whatever, so that we achieve something which is satisfactory to the objector and to everybody else, I think, and the applicant. In principle, yeah, I'll go along with it. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've explained that you've got a number of options. You can approve the application as it is today with the access in its current position, and we can condition that any widening works that to bring it up to 4.5 metres in width are done on its northern side. We can do that. We can't, as part of a condition, require a completely different scheme to be built to what's shown on the plans, and obviously it will be completely different because to move the access north would require a totally different car parking arrangement. You might end up then with cars parked 4 deep on one side of the access as opposed to 2 deep on both sides of the access. So if you're so concerned about the access arrangements and you want it moving, you can defer making a decision today for us to go back to the applicant and their architect and ask for an amended plan. We can then bring it back to committee, assuming they can come up with a suitable scheme that you're happy with. But then we might, if you've got other concerns aside from that, we're no further forward, are we? If my advice to you would be, if you're happy with it, approve it. If you're not, refuse it on residential amenity. I think that, or you can defer for further amendments and negotiations with the applicant and their agent. So there are your 3 choices, really.
Thank you, Mr. Deevy. Councillor Weeks, please.
Thank you. I think the fact that we're trying to bodge the scheme together and make it into something that it's not is proof that how it sits in front of us in its current form isn't appropriate. We can try and condition it as much as we like with different opening times, different, site layout arrangements, whatever. I think what we need to say what it is, it's an inappropriate development in a residential area. The reality is, I love trees are excellent, but I saw that tree that was there. And I think to suggest that will completely mitigate, well, okay, I apologize, will mitigate to a certain extent the damage that the lights are going to do to the people living in that house. I think is quite clearly clutching at branches, Councillor Wood, not necessarily clutching at straws. Look, I believe that this application isn't appropriate. Other councillors can have their own view. I'm not stopping you doing that. I'm certainly not going to argue with you. But I think that we need to be clear on what it is. Saying that a solitary tree is going to be enough to prevent the potential harm to a resident who spent a lot of money on a property living on a nice street. It will help, fine, but it won't solve it, will it? And likewise, as Julie's pointed out, the A63 is quiet on a night. We're concerned about how the traffic is going to impact them on a night time. So, I don't want to get into a massive argument over this, but I'm entitled to my opinion, and I'm going to say it. I don't believe that this application is suitable in its current form. And that's my view, and that's what I'm going to vote for.
Thank you, Councillor Weeks. I have no further hands. We have a proposal for the officer's recommendations with that condition change, which is to be seconded. Shall we go to the vote?
Yeah. So this is for approval. Can I just check first of all, was it approval with reduced hours? No, just the amendment to condition 6. Yeah. Okay. So all those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4.
So that has actually been approved with that change to that condition. Thank you for your deliberations. We will now move on to item number 7, which is on page 70 in your just I will ask for the officers if there are any, the officer, the officer, if there are any updates, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for alterations in the change of use of an existing coach house to form 2 dwellings, including the installation of doors, windows and roof lights, and the erection of a 1.8 metre high brick wall and associated parking at 9 High Street in North Ferriby. The officer's recommendation is approval and there are no updates.
Thank you, Mr. Deedy. We have one speaker on this particular one, which is Mr. McLean. Mr. McLean, are you there?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, Mr. McLean. I'm sorry that you've had to wait so long, but you have, as you will have heard, 3 minutes in which to put your points, and you will be warned when 30 seconds remain. The time will start when you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair and Councillors, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Peter McGlynn, and I'm the applicant for the coach house conversion at 9 High Street. Having lived in North Ferriby my whole life, I've grown up seeing many friends pushed to move elsewhere due to the insufficient supply of first homes within the village. This is due to the majority of housing being substantial family homes, which simply not suitable for first-time buyers. I believe the conversion of the currently disused coach house will add benefit to the village by providing 2 one-bedroomed properties. Furthermore, this will secure and maintain the structure of the historic building for a further 100 years. I'd like to highlight that there's been no objections from neighbours, neighbouring properties or the public. The only objection received was from the Parish Council, who requested the application presented to you today. Parish Council hold concerns over the access to 9 High Street and the coach house. The assessment from the Highway Development Management Team directly assessed the Parish Council's concerns, stating there is sufficient space within the site parking, compliance with the Sustainable Transport (SPD) of the ERLP, and space to manoeuvre to allow vehicles to egress forward gear. The Highway Development Management Team also stated that the previously approved application for 9 High Street, which allows reinstatement of vehicular access to the north of the property, was considered acceptable from highway safety aspect. They also stated that there was no impact to condition 6 of the previously approved application, as the proposed site plan shows sufficient space within the site parking and space for vehicles to manoeuvre to access and egress in a forward gear. During the design process, much care and attention was taken to ensure that all current windows and doors were retained, including the stable doors in the south elevation, to ensure the character and charm is preserved. Despite this, the Parish Council expressed concerns with regards to the doors opening onto the High Street. These are plain black wooden panel doors, which I believe are sympathetic to the building and is not dissimilar to neighbouring properties. The Conservation Officer stated that the works are considered as preserving the character and appearance of the area, and development would provide a sustainable new use of the building. Having reviewed the application, I hope you agree with the Planning Officer's conclusion in that the proposal for a conversion of an existing and prominent building to create 2 new small one-bedroom dwellings within a sustainable location inside the development of the village, and where residential development can be supported, it is therefore considered that the proposal represents a sustainable form of development. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. We'll now move to the debate. Councillor Abraham, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And whilst I declared an interest beginning because fellow ward councillor lives not too far away, I'm also a member of the parish council in North Ferriby, but I didn't attend the planning meeting when this was discussed. Absolutely, I know Peter and his family lived in the village as long as I've been there, and I completely support the converting of this building, which I think has been empty as long as I've been in the village, which is nearly 30 years. And to bring it back into use as accommodation, it will be a fantastic thing. I would like to ask that the two new doors on the high street are specifically conditioned as being timber boarding, because it only says boarding. And whilst all of the water fixtures have been conditioned as being black, I would also like to condition the colour of those doors, otherwise we could end up with any colour. So if that's not unreasonable to do. I would also like to ask if we can, maybe as these are going to be hopefully properties for younger people, that we can maybe have electric vehicle charging points accommodated somewhere within this development. And I would like a clarification, and Peter did refer to the previous condition for the host building at 9 High Street. And I think the condition on that application meant that access was going to be in through Turner's Lane and out onto the High Street, because the proposal on that one is to have sliding doors on the High Street. And I know the parish council was concerned that having sliding doors on the High Street would mean that a vehicle would have to wait in quite a vulnerable location at the bottom of Woodgates Lane. High Street is also obviously the relief road when the A63 is blocked, so it can be a very busy road. So I would like confirmation, that highways have considered that fact, that the access via Turner's Lane will no longer be possible because of the building of the brick wall. And I've lost my train of thought completely. It's an age thing. Yes, and that the planning application for 9 High Street itself won't actually be in breach of its own condition, because that would cause a problem for that application if it was in breach because of this. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. Yeah, the previous scheme, the parish council did want an in and an out arrangement, in from Turner's Lane and out onto High Street. That wasn't a requirement of the highway officer. That's what the parish council wanted. So the highway officer just wanted to make sure that the access and the parking was provided in accordance with the approved plans. The in and out was just desirable for the parish council. Highways have considered the severing of that in and out arrangement. So the two houses will be served by the access from Turner's Lane. When they access the site, they won't be able to turn left. They'll have to turn right to do the one-way system. The access that's proposed for 9 High Street, that's not part of this application, but is already approved through a previous scheme, is acceptable for them to pull in and out of that same access onto High Street. There might be some vehicle waiting on the highway, but highways are not concerned that there's be a safety issue. We have got a condition requiring the preventing of the building of the wall that will stop the in and out arrangement until number 9 has put in its new access. So that condition will prevent us ending up with a situation where number 9 has no parking. In terms of your conditions, you lost me a little bit. I mean, condition 3 says that all new frames, glazing bars and doors need to be timber. So condition 3 requires the doors to be timber construction. Condition 5 says that the north and south facing elevation doors need to be of a vertically boarded type. So boards arranged in a vertical arrangement, which is what this plan show and is historically accurate. And condition 7 deals with replacement rainwater goods. Obviously, the building already has them. They are black, and we want to make sure that any replacements are black. Was there something else you wanted on top of that?
Colour of the doors. You know.
Oh, the doors. Sorry, yeah. So yeah, we can condition that the doors have to be black. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, and I can either put that into condition number 3, or probably more suitable in condition number 5, that they're of a vertically boarded type.
However, as long as we get black doors, not pink ones.
Okay, well I'll put condition 5 that it needs to be black.
Yeah, but just going back to the 9 High Street one though, the parking, etc., was to be as per the submitted drawings and remained in perpetuity. Well, that cannot happen because this application will build a brick wall in the middle of that. So will not the previous application for the host building be in contravention?
I can see exactly what you mean, but highways were not, there's no condition on that permission requiring only access for, only egress from High Street and access from Turner's Lane. And highways were just needed to be satisfied that number 9 would have adequate turning space and to allow them to come in forward gear, park, turn around and exit in forward gear. That's all that they need to be satisfied with. And I think their response sets out that they have considered that and that it wouldn't be in breach of condition 6. So in their response, they say, I'm sure that they mentioned it. So the approved access from High Street to serve number 9 was considered acceptable from a highway safety aspect. There were no objections to the proposal from the Highway Management Act, subject to the satisfactory construction of the access. Condition 6, conditions with inside vehicle parking provision shall be set out and provided in accordance with the details thereafter retained. The proposed site plan shows sufficient space within the site for parking for vehicles to move and access and egress in forward gear. So effectively they're confirming there that there's no breach of condition 6 by approving this application. What we just need to make sure is that they don't convert the coach house, build the wall, and then number 9 has no access or parking. So they can occupy the 2 houses, but they can only build the dividing wall to create the courtyard for the 2 houses once number 9 has got its access from High Street, which is an existing drop curve and a section of wall that doesn't match the rest of the boundary.
I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one. I think that host building will find that it's in contravention of its condition, but you're the expert, not me.
Thank you very much. We've now got Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a good scheme which provides affordable, well, not affordable homes, but more affordable homes for young people in the area. So I'm happy to move approval with the additional conditions about door colours and things that Councillor Abraham suggested. Thank you very much. Councillor Weeks, please.
And it would be my pleasure to second, Chair. You know, this application is exactly what I have been waiting for. I've sat on this committee for 2 years now. This is what young people, first-time buyers need. Properties where they can live in the village that they've grown up, where they can afford houses in the area that they lived, you know, so they don't have to move away. I'm looking at the layout now and I'm just thinking, wow, you know, they've honestly thought of everything. They've even included an office, you know, the way that when we're working now more from home, there's office space, you know, this is so well designed. I'm really happy to see it here, and it would be my pleasure to second it. And to the applicant that's put this forward, well done, sir, you've done a fantastic job.
I'm very pleased that after 2 years we've managed to get one that actually meets your approval. Can we move on to Councillor West, please?
Yeah, just briefly. I don't know the area particularly well, but why do we have to condition a black door? Are all the doors in that street black? And they're all black, are they? Down that street. Right.
Councillor Jump, please. We don't have any other points to raise. Therefore, we have a proposal for approval for the
So this is for approval, with you, and then just condition 5 regarding the black doors. All those in favour?
So that has been approved unanimously, and we will move on to the next one in your agendas, which is item number 8, page 91. And I would just ask Mr. Delia if there are any updates, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of a detached building for use as a private garage and as a showroom for Sasso Automotive at Bentley Hall, Bentley Lane in Walkington. There are no updates, and the officer recommendation is approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one speaker on this. It's Mr. Hallett. Mr. Hallett. you'd like to take a seat there, I think your microphone is already on. If you just bring it close enough so we can hear you, but without touching it with your papers so we get rattled.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes, as you've probably heard, and you'll be warned at 30 seconds when it remains, and the time will start from when you start speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The garage at Bentley Hall has a barn-like form, sympathetic to the location, using materials in keeping with the area. Located within the curtilage of the residential property, behind the house, away from the road, it's screened by hedging and trees. It does not extend the built form into open countryside. There's no loss of agricultural land. 2 previous applications granted permission for a large garage building on this site. Bentley Hall is the family home of the applicant, a car enthusiast and collector. The garage provides a recreation space for the applicant and his family, containing a games room and home cinema area, as well as a secure space for his personal automotive collection and memorabilia. It also provides an office space for the applicant's car brokerage service, Sasso Automotive. There's a perception that Sasso Automotive will bring increased traffic, visitors, low loaders, advertising and direction signs, and disruption to the area. However, this is far from the reality, perhaps due to a misunderstanding of the business model. Sasso Automotive is a bespoke car brokerage service. It is not a car dealership. It is not a commercial garage with vehicles on view for sale. There are no workshop or vehicle maintenance facilities on site. There is no access for the public. Client visits are strictly by appointment only. Sasso Automotive is predominantly a remote business with an office space conveniently based in the garage of the family home at Bentley Hall. The brokerage service deals exclusively with performance, prestige and classic cars. Typically, the client will contact the business seeking a specific vehicle. Following a brief from the client, Sasso Automotive research and locate a suitable vehicle, and if this meets the customer requirements, will broker the acquisition of the vehicle on behalf of the customer. They arrange transfer of the vehicle directly from the vendor to the purchaser. In most cases, this does not require either the client or the vehicle to come to Bentley Hall. Only a small number of vehicles come to Bentley Hall through Sasso Automotive. Occasionally, vehicles are purchased for or sold from the applicant's private collection. The bespoke service will not significantly increase visitors, traffic or turning at the property. There are not and will not be any advertising or direction signs associated with the operation of the brokerage business.
Hallett, you have 30 seconds left.
A condition of the previous approval required the garage to have a purpose ancillary to the residential use of the main house, which it clearly does. The condition also precludes the use of the garage as a wholly separate dwelling, and clearly this remains the case. The applicant welcomes the additional recommended condition restricting commercial use of the garage to the activities described in the application, as this accords with his business model. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the debate. Councillor Meredith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Like yourself, Councillors Rudd and Councillor Fox, the 4 of us were committee members back in 2018 when we all saw this application originally. And I must admit, I wasn't overly enamoured with the design that was originally put to us, but I did think it was complementary enough to what effectively amounts to a stately home in the form of Bentley Hall, and that the modernist design was an acceptable, is juxtaposition the right word? It didn't seem to clash as much as, or conflict as much as I thought it complemented. So I was actually quite happy to support the previous application for what I thought would be, car storage for somebody who's quite interested in cars, and a nice play area upstairs for children. If I remember right, I believe the applicant brought his family in that day, and they were all lined up just over there. So it wasn't too controversial an application. However, having said that, I look at what we approved that did walk the line somewhat. I would have preferred something a bit more classic, more brick, more stone, slate roof, more in keeping with the surroundings. And I look at what can only really be described as a mammoth shed that we've got now. And I can't say I'm in any way attracted to what we see there. And I actually believe that it does conflict with the whole and is of detriment to it, which saddens me really, because it could have been quite tasty. The commercial use in a residential area is something that I wouldn't have supported in 2018 and can't see myself supporting now. It's an unsustainable location for staff, for visitors, especially if you're going to buy a car, you probably want to drive that home, so you'd get the bus or a taxi or walk. So I just don't see it sitting well in the landscape, which is a landscape of high area character. So reluctantly, I'll admit, because I'm not overly against the application, but it has failed of being more pro than cons by my measure. I think that the best way to define what I see before us is that everything that was right with the Appleby application is missing here, and everything that was wrong with it is magnified. So frustratingly, I'm going to have to move refusal on this. And the reasons for that are the unsustainable location, the size to scale, the use, the previous conditions preventing commercial use, and the impact on the hall, and that it distracts and detracts from a stately home.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Councillor Rudd, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as Councillor Councillor Meredith states, some of us were on the planning committee in 2018 when we moved approval for an application here. I think we've had it explained by the agent that, you know, that there's no repairs here. This is a commercial garage. There's no sign saying, you know, garage dealership here or whatever, or and set of cars to be bought here or anything of that nature. It is done on a private basis, and as we all know, planning for many years, that, you know, some businesses are run from people's homes. Now, if the owner of the Bentley Hall wishes to have this on his property, that is his business, as it were. It is his property at the end of the day. And I don't see any problem with this. Yes, it is, if you like, making something correct, if you like, which, perhaps, you know, at the end of the day, as it states here, it's been done slightly differently, and this would approve of it, and so on. But at the end of the day, you know, it isn't making any difference to anyone. It's not affecting anyone. There's no neighbours. It's not taking a agricultural land, which is useful for the area. And I don't see any problem with this. I'd like to move approval as recommended by the officers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond, please.
Thank you, Chair. I believe I'm correct in saying that the building which was agreed and approved in 2018 is a similar size and scale to this building.
Yeah, so the building that you're considering today is the building on the screen for you there.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but it's similar size to the one that's already got planning permission.
Yeah, the 2017 one is that one, and the 2018 one was even bigger at that scale, all on a similar footprint in a similar place on the site.
Yeah, so the principle's there for the building, so therefore it comes down to what the building looks like. I don't know about anyone else, but I don't actually know what Bentley Hall looks like. Do you have any pictures of Bentley Hall?
I don't, I'm afraid.
No.
If I may.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to differ.
Pros and cons here, Councillor Hammond. There are a lot of houses, particularly in Rowley Parish, that are farmhouses and thus have barns similar to that in the surrounding area. So in terms of being in keeping with its surrounding area, I actually can't fault it too much, and that's why I said reluctantly move for refusal. However, having said that, Bentley Hall is a fabulous building. It's truly significant, and it's not what you would call your stereotypical, you know, 2 up, 2 down farmhouse. And for that reason, I think that the last design that had the staggered roof went above and beyond to be complementary towards it by being designed to such a standard that it was keeping up with the Joneses, to use a neighbouring phrase, whereas this is more stereotypically barn. And I think that personally, I think they've missed a trick, and that if they'd done something more similar to the original application, it would have been more palatable. This just seems to be, we'll put up a barn because there are barns and argue that it's similar. And again, for me, it's not a 90-10, it's a 55-45, but ultimately there are barns in the area, but this, I believe that this area and the quality of Bentley Hall warrants something more significant and greater. That helps, but probably not.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith, but sadly I still don't know what Bentley Hall looks like. So for me, I mean, not that I don't trust your word, but for me, I feel more comfortable voting on it, knowing what the hall looks like. So I'm going to propose a site visit so that we can go there and see, because the principle of the building is there. It's just a case of whether the original plans were more suited to the host dwelling or whether these plans are more suited. So I feel much more comfortable knowing what the host dwelling looks like. So I'm going to propose a site visit. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Weeks, please.
I'm happy to second Councillor Hammond, actually. I promise this isn't just an excuse to look at the cars. I do actually agree with him that I've just tried to get Bentley Hall up on Street View while I'm here, and I've no idea what I'm looking at. So I think it would be really useful. I think it would be really unfair to move refusal straight away. I mean, it's a retrospective application. I'm not going to go into that. They had planning permission to build something, they didn't build it. I'll never understand why that's done. Never mind. We are where we are. So I think it would be unfair for us to move refusal straight away. I would quite like the opportunity to see it before having made, being made to make a decision, but I'll go with what the majority go with.
Councillor West, please.
Yeah, okay. I'm not particularly in favour of going on a site visit. I can see that the points people are making, that it's a barn, they put cars in it. You look on the drawing on page 106, is it? That's the numbers that small. Yeah, there appears to be a barn which will be to the south of the Bentley Hall that's just marked barn with some hatchings. I'm assuming that's nothing to do with the Bentley Hall, and it's maybe just a grain store, something like that. Looks a similar footprint to what was the tennis court and is now the barn. It's not exactly in the front of the house, it's at the side. I don't, I mean, it's unfortunate, as Councillor Weeks says, that people don't build what's there. There you go, picture of whatever that is. Is that any better? I don't think it is. So yeah, I would support approval.
Councillor Fox, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Well, I would love to go see Bentley Hall and those beautiful cars, but I'm decided to go for approval and second Councillor Rudd. Okay.
I think it's already been seconded, but thank you. Did you want a second? Okay. In that case, thank you very much indeed. We have, Councillor Davison.
Just initially, I mean, I think I could go with either of those proposals. Probably Councillor Hammond's is more attractive. But I think I should just point out that it's regrettable that a tennis court has disappeared in the process.
I didn't realise you were so influenced by tennis courts, but yeah, but I understand that. We have no other further comments. I have to say that given the location, the type of thing that this is happening, other than one neighbour overlooking, there's very little difference between this and Hasselby. Yet we instantly turn that down and we're talking about approving this. In terms of this particular one, I agree with just about everybody's view, and I have no issue with anybody on this. So I'm going to go with the flow. Councillor Hammond, you wish to come back in?
Yeah, just to clarify, Chair, the difference between this and the previous applications, that this building already had planning permission, so the principles established. Whether we were talking about the brand new principle, I may feel differently about the building, because of similar reasons to the previous application, but the principle's already been established. Just to clarify.
It's very kind of you to clarify. I was being more rhetorical than actually asking a question. Right, so we have a.
First and second.
We had a site visit proposed and seconded as the first. Okay, so we're going to go with that one first.
It's all those in favour of the site visit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against the site visit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, so that has failed. So we'll move on to the,
Approval. Double checking, there's no extra, oh, just the, no extra amendments or anything, so straightforward approval. So all those in favour of approval? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against approval? 1, 2, 3. 1, any abstentions?
so that has been approved as per the officer's recommendations. And thank you for your deliberations, everyone. That is the end of our committee. Thank you again, and no doubt we'll see you next time.
As always, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.